Hi everyone. So this video will help support the parents of Year 10 pupils at Hammersmith Academy. And we're using the video as an opportunity to try and outline some key principles around the curriculum and to basically answer any questions that you might have in advance of our parents' evening in order to maximise the amount of time we have to talk about your child in a more detailed way. So one of the key questions that comes up usually in Year 10 parents' evening is, what are they studying or what do they need to know? Well, the curriculum for Year 10 really covers the three major texts they're expected to learn for their GCSE in English literature. They begin the year with An Inspector Calls. They then move on to study Macbeth by Shakespeare, and they finish the year with Jekyll and Hyde by Robert Louis Stevenson. So those three texts are broken up across the year. Now, the modules, we have 6 in the year, and the first module assessment, as they are reading An Inspector Calls, they are working on creative writing skills for Language Paper 1. Module 2, we assess them on the literature of An Inspector Calls. So across Module 1 and 2, the main focus is An Inspector Calls by J.B. Priestley. We provide them with the copies of the text, they annotate them with us in the class, and they take them home. It is theirs to keep. When we get to Module 3, we change the focus of language to transactional writing, so speech writing, letters, articles, but they begin reading Macbeth by Shakespeare. Then Module 4, they are assessed on the literature of Shakespeare, and the same applies. We give them a copy of the text. It's actually a very good copy, it's colour coded, it has annotations already prepared in it, and that copy is theirs to keep. Moving on to Module 5, the same principle applies. They study language in the sense that they practice transactional skills, but in the same time, they are actually reading the opening chapters to Jekyll and Hyde by Robert Louis Stevenson. And then when we get to Module 6, we do the literature assessment on specifically Jekyll and Hyde. So by the time they've finished their entire Year 10, they've covered 3 major texts: An Inspector Calls by J.B. Priestley, Macbeth by Shakespeare, and Jekyll and Hyde by Robert Louis Stevenson. And equally, they've also had a multitude of opportunities for practice on the language side of the GCSE paper as well. When they get into Year 11, the only new piece of material they really have to learn in Year 11 is the poetry anthology. So by the time we get usually to Christmas in Year 11, everything after Christmas for our pupils at the Academy is revision, review of material and practice. So that's the really kind of overview of the curriculum, hopefully to support you. And also to make you know, there is no need to buy these texts. We provide them free of charge at the Academy, and all pupils by the end of Year 10 should have their copies at home in order to study them and review them over the summer break before Year 11. Now, in terms of what you can do to support that, we don't expect you by any means to know these texts inside out, but what can be a very simple practice to support your young person at home with their literature is to simply ask them every so often, where are you now in the text? So with Inspector Calls, they're actually completely finished it at this stage of the year. It's currently January. So they've finished Inspector Calls in the first long term. You could ask them anything you want about that text and they should be able to explain the whole plot to you. And theoretically, they should also be able to tell you at least 5 to 10 quotes from that text from memory. So at home, you can be revising that even just round the dinner table. The same goes for Macbeth with Shakespeare, and obviously, of course, at the end with Jekyll and Hyde and Robert Louis Stevenson as well. So first and foremost, we would ask you to just have conversations with your child at home about these texts, and it keeps them firm in the mind of the young people at home. The second thing is, we would really suggest that we try, if you can, to get your child to read non-fiction writing. What we encounter in the language side of the GCSE is that a lot of young people struggle with journalistic writing, non-fiction writing, reviews, articles, and because they're not accustomed to reading that kind of material, they struggle with it. So we would suggest as parents, if you can, once a week, once every 2 weeks, ask your young person to read an article or a piece of journalism from a magazine and discuss that piece with them. It should be short enough, it's able to be done in 5 to 10 minutes. We don't obviously expect you to go away and ask them to read full non-fiction texts, but these kind of things will help support your young person at home. Now, those are the key things I would suggest, and those are some of the main questions we get asked. What do you cover and how do we support? Well, what we cover are those 3 main texts and language techniques and practice, and what you should do to help them at home. Talk to them as frequently as possible about An Inspector Calls, Macbeth and Jekyll and Hyde, and try if you can to implement some opportunities to review and look at non-fiction prose where you can, where it's frequent, where it's possible. Those are the key things. Hopefully I've covered some of the main elements in preparation for the Year 10 Parents' Evening, and we look forward to talking to you all about your young people on the night itself. Thanks.